What does having a physical disability mean? So, physical disability is defined as a condition that affects a person's mobility, physical capability, stamina, or dexterity. This can include brain or spinal cord injuries, multiple sclerosis, cerebral palsy, respiratory disorders, epilepsy, hearing and visual impairments, and many more. So, for the disabled inmate population, the physically disabled population in jails and prisons is often overlooked. Everyone knows that jail or prison life is hard and that having a disability is often very challenging as well, but very few people put two and two together and imagine how hard it would be if you were both disabled and an inmate. Disabled inmates will often be placed into solitary confinement, which has many devastating effects on the individual. It's very hard for someone without a disability in solitary confinement. But for disabled inmates, they are unable to perform life's basic daily tasks. The American Civil Liberties Union, also known as ACLU, explains that they are placed here because jails and prisons are not typically built to accommodate the physically disabled. Problems with solitary and disabled inmates, you're going to have the biggest issue with solitary confinement and disabled inmates being the issue of medical assistance. Individuals may not be able to communicate to prison staff of their needs. Simple things just like getting dressed, using the restroom, showering, stuff like that will provide very challenging without assistance. Another potential issue is solitary can cause inmates' physical skills and health to decline. And then the more knowledge the general population has on this issue, the more pressure they can put on the correctional facilities to be better equipped and better able to handle the disabled population of inmates. So for specific needs of the physically disabled inmates, there are many different physical disabilities, making it very hard to quantify all the possible special needs that they could need, but individuals with mobility or spinal cord injuries may need things like wheelchairs, ramps, help getting dressed and showered, where inmates with respiratory disorders may need things like inhalers, breathing devices, some type of medicine, or to be closely monitored by prison staff. The prison staff need to be knowledgeable about each inmate's specific disability conditions and needs. This will reduce the chances of the inmate being mistreated because the prison staff doesn't understand what is going on or that inmate's specific needs. Specific needs of hearing impaired inmates specifically may be resources like braille materials. They may need some sign language interpreters. They may need hearing aids or maybe auxiliary aids.
3 in 10 prisoners have at least one disability, while 4 in 10 jail inmates have at least one. 13% of prisoners and 16% of jail inmates reported having more than one disability. Females are more likely than males to report at 40% female and 31% male. 2 in 10 prisoners and 3 in 10 jail inmates reported having a cognitive disability, which was found by the Bureau of Justice Statistics to be the most prevalent. Non-Hispanic whites at 37% and multi-race prisoners at 42% were more likely to report having a disability than non-Hispanic blacks at 26%. Over half reported a co-occurring chronic condition along with their disability. Those with disability were more likely to report past 30-day psychological stress than those who did not have a disability. Deinstitutionalization dropped the number of people in mental institutions or other psychological institutions greatly. However, the financial support needing to keep these people in outpatient community programs instead of those institutions was not present. Thus, these people became members of other large institutions, prisons, and jails. In Los Angeles County, the cost of housing a mentally disabled inmate was $48,500 a year compared to just $20,500 for assertive community treatment and supportive housing for those with mental or physical disabilities. In 2015, Cook County reported the daily cost for inmates to be approximately $143, but it was twice as much for those with disabilities. 2,000 of the 9,000 at that time had either a physical or mental disability.
A few policies to be discussed that protect the disabled or ill inmates have been the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Section 504, the American Disability Act of 1990, Section 12,131, and the Eighth Amendment. The first policy to be discussed is the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. In Section 504, it states that the Rehabilitation Act prohibits discrimination on the basis of disabilities in programs conducted by federal agencies, in programs receiving federal financial assistance, in federal employment, and in the employment practices of federal contractors. When applied in the prisons or jail systems, this means that when an individual with a disability wishes to participate in a program the prison or jail provides, they cannot be discriminated against because of a disability. An application of the Rehabilitation Acts would be in the court case Lafott v. Smith, 1987. Lafott was a paraplegic confined to a wheelchair, and he was denied adequate toilet facilities and physical therapy. Lafott filed a complaint that being denied adequate toilet facilities and physical therapy was a discrimination against his disability and medical needs. The court held that Lafott's rights were violated and also included that the discrimination not only violates the Rehabilitation Act, but also the Eighth Amendment. The next policy to be discussed is the American Disability Act of 1990, Section 12,131. Title II of the American Disability Act states, "No qualified individual with a disability shall, by reason of such disability, be excluded from participation in or be denied the benefits of services, programs, or activities of public entity or be subjected to discrimination by such entity." Title II of the American Disability Act applies to states and local government entities, including the jail and prison system. An example of the American Disability Act being applied would be the court case Pennsylvania Department of Corrections versus Yeski, 1998. Ronald Yeski was sentenced to 18 to 36 months in prison and was recommended for a motivational boot camp for first-time offenders. If the program was completed, Yeski could potentially be released after only 6 months of incarceration. Yeski was denied participation in the program on the basis of his medical history of hypertension. A unanimous decision was made by the Supreme Court and held that not allowing Yeski in the program because of previous illness is discriminatory and violates the American Disability Act. The last policy we discussed is the Eighth Amendment. The Eighth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution states, "Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted." This can be used by individuals in the prison system or jail system that feel that their jail or prison conditions while being disabled or ill violates the cruel and unusual punishment portion of this amendment. The application of the Eighth Amendment can be seen in the court case Estelle v. Gamble, 1976. Gamble was injured by a 600 bale of cotton while working on a textile mill in prison. Gamble was treated by doctors by either receiving painkillers or being diagnosed with something other than a back injury. He refused to work on many accounts because of his back pain and was punished with solitary confinement. Gamble never received an X-ray on his back. The Supreme Court held that Gamble was receiving medical help, therefore he did not suffer any punishment that was cruel and unusual. The inadequate treatment did not mean that there was maltreatment. Another court case mentioned before was Lafott v. Smith. Lafott was denied adequate toilet facilities and required physical therapy. The court held that the lack of inadequate toilet facilities and physical therapy constituted cruel and unusual punishment.